Hello, Year 12 A-Level Psychology. Here is the assignment for you to complete when I'm away from college in Greece and you are getting on with your psychology work. Now, you'll notice from the spec here that the work I'm asking you to do satisfies the criteria for topic 1.2 methods and topic 1.5 practical investigation. I mean, you would have been doing this work anyway, just at a slightly later date. I've brought it forward because it's something that you can easily do outside of classroom time. And as I say, we would be doing it anyway. Obviously, if you have any questions, please ask Miss Hubbard, who is the head of psychology. But you should find it pretty straightforward. Okay, so the assignment is all focused around key questions and a practical investigation. You'll be doing lots of practical investigations throughout your time as a psychology student. And this is a fairly accessible one because it's going to be on questionnaires. Have a read through this. You might want to pause the video at this point so you can properly take in all of this here. Let me just call attention though to the worksheet. The worksheet I've given you mirrors this PowerPoint. So whatever is on the PowerPoint is on the worksheet. Fill in the worksheet as you go. I would suggest filling it in electronically rather than on paper. I prefer to work electronically. I don't like to have lots of paper flying around because I think it's easy to lose it. Whereas electronically, you've got it there in a folder on a cloud or something, so it's much easier. So have a read through of this, and then we'll go on to the first task. So the first task is there's a bit of a rogue A there, that shouldn't be there. What is quantitative data and what is qualitative data? So that's the focus of this first task. So the first thing to do, you can use your textbook throughout this task, but you may not need to, because when we're looking at putting together an investigation like this one, you can use other reliable online sources. If you have the textbook to hand, have a look at it, but you probably find that you don't really need to use it that much for this task. First task, provide 3 examples of behaviours that could be investigated and measured using a questionnaire. Now, a questionnaire measures thoughts, opinions, feelings, ideas, attitudes, viewpoints. So it doesn't measure variables such as height, shoe size, weight, etc., eye colour. That they are kind of just factual pieces of information that would be put on a form, like maybe a medical form or something. A questionnaire is questioning you about how you feel, what you think, what you believe, what your opinion is on a range of topics. And the word behaviours here, it doesn't mean physical, actual, observed behaviour. It's simply behaviour is anything that a human being can experience. So when we say behaviours in psychology, we don't mean necessarily observable physical behaviours. So behaviours could be, you could have a questionnaire on what's your attitude towards the new Prime Minister, something like that. Or it could be, how do you feel about how stressful is your student life, something like that. So you are reflecting using your own ideas. So write down 3 behaviours that you think you could measure using a questionnaire. Okay, so now you've identified 3 behaviours. Choose one of them as your chosen behaviour. Write 1 closed and 1 open question on that topic. So if you're thinking, I don't know what she means, what's closed, what's an open question? Let me use an example of my own, roller skating. Yes, I know you might find this hard to believe, but I really am really quite mad about roller skating. I'm actually quite good at it as well. So I'm going to give you 1 closed and 1 open question, and then you write your own closed question and you write your own open question. Closed question: would you choose roller skating over shopping with your chums? So you tick yes or you tick no, and that's all you can do. You can't answer in any other way. This is why it's a closed question. The participant can only answer yes or no. They have no freedom to respond in any other way. So other examples of closed questions use, extra E, rating scales. For example, on a scale of 1 to 10, say how much you enjoy roller skating. Or multiple choice questions. Roller skating makes me feel A, alive, or B, bored, or C, homicidal. So your participant chooses A, B, or C. And this gives you easy ways of measuring, because you just you count up how many A's, how many B's, you count up what they scored for the question on the rating scale of 1 to 10. You just add up all of their scores and then you analyse them quite in a quite straightforward way. So the open question, tell me what you enjoy about roller skating. So this is an open question, as the participant can answer freely. There are no restrictions as to how they respond. So you get the participant, you're not closing them down. This is why it's an open question. It's open to them. You're opening up the possible ways they can answer. They speak freely or they write freely. They behave in a way that is more natural, rather than getting them to tick a box. Which of the above type of question, closed or open, do you think provides a researcher with quantitative data? So quantitative data is data in the form of numbers. So total numbers, numbers per sample, percentages, fractions, ratios, that you can display it in a graph. And which type of question provides qualitative data? Qualitative data is data in the form of words. So free writing of how somebody feels about roller skating, for example, or free expression about how they feel about roller skating. And the word data just refers to the information you collect. Data doesn't mean numerical data. It can be any data you collect, any information you get from your participants. So quantitative data, do you think you get quantitative data from closed or open questions? Put your answer there. Qualitative data, do you think you get qualitative data from closed or open questions? And put your answer there. And let's move on once you've done that. Which of the following questions are closed and which are open? Now, annoyingly, this PowerPoint has not translated these into numbers, but never mind, let's just see how we do with it. I think on your worksheet it actually has numbers on it or letters on it. How would you feel if hamsters took over the world? Is that closed or open? Terrified, delighted, confused. So you are given the choices here. Yeah, it hasn't really worked on the PowerPoint, but on the worksheet you'll see that that is one question. Sorry to confuse you. Here's the second question. Explain why you took your hamster to KFC last Saturday. So is that open or closed? Here is the third question. Do you have a special name for your giant hamster? Yes or no. Is that closed or open? Finally, tell me what happened the day your hamster first spoke to you. Is that open? Is it closed? Is it closed? Is it open? So closed questions on the above list, and as I say on your worksheet, I think it's more helpful that you actually have numbers you can put in there. Open questions on the above list are, if you like, you could just write closed or open on the sheet next to the question. Whatever floats your boat, whatever works, that's my motto. Okay, let's move on. What are sampling methods? Now this is where it gets a little bit more, not exactly technical, but we get a bit more terminology, and you might be introduced to topics you haven't really looked at before. So read the following guide, this one here, to sampling methods in psychological research. Don't worry if this is rather a lot of terminology and keywords. Soon you will know this stuff like the back of your hand. I promise. It takes a while, but it's like learning anything new. It feels a bit weird at first, but after a while it's just second nature. I'm not going to click on that now. You can pause the video, click on this link, it's not very long, and have a look at there are 4 examples of sampling on there that are relevant to the edXL spec. There's maybe 1 or 2 that aren't, but that doesn't matter. We'll just be focusing on the ones that are. Have a look at it and then say which type of sampling is being demonstrated here. A researcher puts out an ad on social media asking for teenagers to take part in a study on stress. This is what type of sampling? A researcher puts all the names of the target population. Target population means the people that they are targeting. So your target population might be 11 to 14-year-old girls. Your target population might be men aged 50 to 60 who enjoy mountain climbing. Yeah, the target population is not just everybody in the world. So they put the names of the target population in a name generator to find a sample of 100 participants. So this is what sampling. So number 3, a researcher wants to find a sample that best represents the target population. So in other words, if your target population are people who enjoy mountain climbing aged 30 to 60, you have to represent that in your sample. So you can't have people who are under 30 or over 60, and you need to get the correct proportion in terms of gender, ethnicity, professional background, etc. So you have to match your sample to your target population in terms of its quota. So what type of sampling is this? A researcher goes to a shopping centre and uses whoever is there at the time to form the sample. So this is what sort of sampling? And when I get back from my holiday, we will be looking at this and I'll be making sure that you've understood it. So designing your questionnaire. Now, this is the good bit. You get to design and conduct your own questionnaire. Woo! Big woo, whoop, whoop. If you like, you can work with another person. I would say it's much more fun to work with another person, so go do it. Your questionnaire should follow these guidelines. It should contain 6 questions. You're thinking, well, that's not very much. Well, believe me, once you come to actually sit down and think about how you're going to write those questions and how you're going to construct them and do they properly answer the brief, and 6 is more than enough. And you're going to have to get people your age to fill it in. So, they're not going to want to spend a lot of time doing that. So participants need to state their age and gender on the questionnaire. You're thinking, why? Why do we need to know that? You need to know that because it's useful for your analysis later on. How many people of this gender responded this way, how many the other way. Now, these days, we live in very gender fluid times, and some people may not wish to identify as male or female. So I would include options on your form for either gender neutral maybe, or prefer not to say, because people these days are quite sensitive about gender and rightly don't want to be labelled. So think about that when you're designing your questionnaire. So there should be 5 closed questions and 1 open question. The reason that you have 5 closed questions is you can easily measure your numerical data, your quantitative data from your 5 closed questions. Your 1 open question is just for you to look at and see what they've put. It might be quite interesting, but you can't actually analyse it using the methods we're going to. You'll be able to do that later on in your psychology studies. You must use opportunity sampling. You cannot use any of the other forms. You really cannot. It is just not going to work. Even the volunteer sampling isn't going to work really, because time is of the essence. So the best way to do this is to ask one of your teachers if you can steal 5 minutes of their lesson for the class to fill in the questionnaire. Don't use your psychology class, because everyone will be doing this task and you'll all be too aware of what you're being asked, and it kind of invalidates the results. Or you might want to use whoever is in the student common room one break time. It's up to you. But if I were you, I would ask the teacher to present this on the whiteboard and have your participants just fill in their responses on a piece of paper, like with question 1, question 2, what's their response, what number are they giving for question 1 or 2, and then collect them in. But remember to ask them to put not their name but their age and their gender on the form. Or if you want to print out forms, do so, but keep them short, because paper is precious and we don't want to deprive the rainforests of many more trees. So the topic of your questionnaire should be, how obedient are you? We've already started our work on obedience, so this fits in beautifully, right? Don't ask them any technical questions about agentic state and autonomous state, because they unless they're psychology students, they won't know what on earth you're talking about. Keep it really simple and straightforward. You could contextualize it. It could be something like, how do you respond to a uniform? Or it could be, how obedient are you to your parents or your teachers? Or how obedient are you in public or in private or whatever? But just, you can keep it general. How obedient are you, if you like? So the closed questions you include should all use a rating scale. So for example, you get your question or statement here On a scale of 1 to 7, how likely are you to empty your pockets if a police officer told you to? And there we have from not at all likely, with bits in between, up to very likely. So 1 is the lowest, it's kind of no, I'm not going to do it. Up to 7 is like, heck, yes, I'm going to do it. And everywhere in between is either more or less in agreement with what the action is. So you must, if you then add yes, no questions and you add multiple choice questions, it's really, you're not going to be able to measure, to come out with a total score. It's going to be too difficult. You've got to keep your measurement all at the same level, because otherwise you end up in a right mess. So keep every question on a rating scale of 1 to 7. It just makes it a lot easier. And you have to make sure that your questions are worded so that high scores indicate high levels of obedience. And you might think, oh, well, everyone filling it in is going to know that. Well, yeah, of course they are. I mean, you're student researchers. It's your first piece of research. You're not going to reinvent the wheel here. So it doesn't matter that they might fill it in thinking, oh, I'm going to do it wrong. I'm going to answer incorrectly on purpose. That's kind of part of the plan in a way, because it will help us with our evaluation later. So, yeah, keep it simple. Don't do anything fancy schmancy, because it won't work. Your open question can be phrased any way you like, and be sure to leave some space for the participant to expand on their response. Keep all of the filled in questionnaires. You're going to need them for the next bit. So this will take a while to do this and to carry it out. Do not lose your results. Can I just say that again? Do not lose your results. I have taught a lot of IB psychology where students had to run their own experiment and keep their results, and it was worth like 25% of their grade. And more times than I'd like to remember, students have lost their results, which means they have zero data, which means they have to start again. Keep your results. Don't give them all to one person. You should all have a record of them, or keep them in a place in the classroom. Ask the teacher, can we put this here? Because you will need them next time. So, analysing your data. Now, I think what I've given you to do so far is quite a lot. So I'm going to say, if you want to do this before I get back on the 26th, hey, knock yourself out, go and do it. Loving your work. But if you want to wait until I'm back, it's fine, because it won't take very long, and we can do it in the lesson, and we can then make sure that everybody knows what mean means, if you know what I mean. That's a lot of means, isn't it? So go ahead and do it. It won't take long. But if maths makes you go, ooh, ouch, then, just leave it. It's no sweat. Cool, baby. Just cool your jets, and we can do it later on. Now, what you do is calculate the mean, right? Count up all of the scores per questionnaire. What's the total mean score? You obviously can't include the open question, because that's not quantitative data. So the highest score a participant could reach would be 35, as 7 is the highest rating, and there are 5 closed questions. So the higher the score, the more obedient the person is. So that's in your data set. So you'd calculate all the totals of each paper. So somebody might have 35, someone might have 30, someone might have 20, someone might have 15, whatever. Someone might have 0 or 1 or 7 or 5, because they might be very naughty and disobedient. So that will give you, once you've divided it by the number of participants in your group, that will give you the mean. So what we're going to do now, though, is try and make it a bit more interesting, because just having an overall mean score isn't going to tell us very much. So in psychology, you always have 2 conditions that you compare. Now, you may have had a sample that included both males and females and other gender identities. So take your sample and have a look at it. Find all the scores from males. This is why you needed them to indicate gender earlier on. All the scores from females. You might need to exclude scores from people who have said prefer not to say, because that is kind of an indecisive result. I would leave that if I were you, unless you want to create a separate category and have 3 means. Up to you. I'm leaving that up to you. So, if your sample only contained one gender, then you can only calculate one mean, right? So you calculate the mean for males and the mean for females, and then if you've only got one gender, just the mean for that gender group. And then you present your findings in a bar graph. So if you have one mean for males and one mean for females, you have 2 bars in your bar graph. If you just had one gender, you're only going to have 1 bar in your bar graph. So to calculate the mean, as I've said, let's say the total score for the males is 132 and the score from the females is 175, sorry. You then divide this number by the number of people per sample. So if you have 6 males in your sample, the mean score for males is 132 divided by 6, so that's 22. If you have 7 females in your sample, the mean score for females is 175 divided by 7, which equals 25. And you may conclude from this data that females tend to be more obedient than males. But you may have a different result. I don't know. This is the interesting thing about psychology. Difficult to predict. So you present your findings in a bar graph. Here is an example. It's not anything to do with obedience, and there are lots of different categories here. Notice that hamsters feature again. I'm surprised that hamsters are so low down on the list, but hey, what are you going to do? Give your graph a title. This title here is what kind of pet do you own? And label the axes. This axis here is number of people, and this axis here has the categories. And that's it. Oh no, sorry, that's not it, because we have to do the range. Sorry. You relaxed for a moment there, didn't you? You just don't relax yet. So calculate the range. The range is a measure of dispersion. It simply means how spread out are the scores. Do they all cluster around the mean, or are they all far and wide? We won't do standard deviation yet. We'll leave that. We'll do range for the moment, because range is much more straightforward. So to do this, look at the list of scores from your male and then from those from your female participants. If you only have one gender, just look at the one set of scores. What is the lowest score in the male sample? Subtract this from the highest score in the male sample. This will give you the range for the male sample. So if your lowest score was, I don't know, 1, and your highest score was, oh sorry, it won't be 1 because, yeah, let's say your lowest score is 10 and your highest score is, I don't know, 28, then your range would be 18. Yes. So now do this it's without having scores in front of me. Sorry, it's difficult for me to kind of visualize it. Now do this for the female sample. So you get the range for the male sample is, let's say 18, and let's say for the female sample it might be 12. Your range will not be the same as your mean. It's a different calculation. So even though your mean might be 1 score, your range will be different, because mean shows you the average and range shows you how spread out the scores are. Okay, have we got there? Yeah, I feel like that's quite a lot of work for you to have done over the 2 weeks. And I really look forward to looking at them and to discussing them with you. And if there are problems and issues and you hit a brick wall or something goes wrong, that's fine. That's good. You're learning. Learning doesn't happen in a straight line. It's all twizzled and twisted and, roundabout. So if I come back from Greece and you say, oh, this was really difficult, and it was so frustrating trying to do this, I was like, yeah, it is. Good. You've understood that. We don't expect it to be a smooth and, unbumpy ride. And on that note, I'm saying coolio, peace out, dudes, and I will see you soon. Arrivederci, as they say in Italy.